Welcome back to our statistic learning session. Today, we'll be talking about advantages and limitation of a student's distribution. So let's get started. What are the advantages of student's distribution? Let me tell you. One of the advantages of student distribution is that it can be used for small sample test. Small sample means the observation is less than 30, and therefore small sample are asymptotic or non-asymptotic, and that's why it can be used for small sample test. But what is the drawback of that? When we use the student distribution or students test on small sample distribution, can you tell me? The limitation of this when we are working with small set of data is that we need to assume that data is Gaussianly distributed. The distribution of data is Gaussian. We have to assume that. And if the data and for that we need to have a domain knowledge of the data where is where from where data is recorded. We need a domain knowledge of that. Now next comes the large sample. For large sample we don't need the assumption that data is Gaussianly distributed, because whether data is Gaussianly distributed or not, when we are doing for when we are testing asymptotically, then central limit kicks in and everything becomes Gaussian. Thus everything becomes Gaussian. Thus, when we are dealing with small sample size, we have to rely on the fact that the data is Gaussian. But if the data is large sample, we don't need to rely on anything. Secondly, this is a one size fits all. This student distribution is divided such that it can be used for small sample and large sample equally. We don't need to switch to Gaussian distribution or z-test when we are dealing with large sample. We can still use the student distribution for large sample. One thing we have to point out is that it is difficult to compute the student's distribution for large sample. Let's say let's say there are 5,000 variables. How do we do that? How there are 5,000 free variables? How do we compute the student distribution for such a large sample with such large number of variables? Of course, when we have such a huge number of when we have such a 5,000 observations, let's say there are 5,000 observations, and we need to compute a student distribution for that, then we'll simply use computer. Computer doesn't care whether it's how many rows there are, 5,000, 10,000, doesn't matter. But if human is doing that, then probably we'll go toward Gaussian. Probably pretend that the 5,000 variable data is Gaussian. In the end, let me quickly summarize what we learned today. We talked about student distribution. What are its advantages and disadvantages? For advantages, student distribution is that it can be used for small tests and large tests. And the drawback is that when we use student distribution for small sample size, we have to assume the data is Gaussian. That's all for today. I'll see you next learning session. Thank you so much.